Sutta Discovery, Volume 8. Volume 8, Sutta, Chapter 8. Actually, there are more than one Vakkali Sutta. We have the Sutta and then you have the story also, right? So it's about someone called Vakkali. Actually, it's not someone, it's more like some two. There are probably two people with the same name, we're not sure. So there are at least two stories, a number of commentarial explanations, a very interesting story, very modern, also relate to modern people. Now, this one is from the Sutta, is from Samyutta, chapter 22, on the aggregates. It is a meditation on the aggregates, and Sutta number 87, okay? We'll probably do a bit of Sutta Puja afterwards. I will teach you how to do it. We have done it before. We'll do it again just to help us reflect. So our Sutta study is not just learning Sutta, knowing Sutta. We study Sutta to connect with this ancient, wonderful feeling of renunciation, of peace and joy, right? Not just to know things, because when we know a lot of things, then we form views, we point out people are wrong, who is right, who's wrong, and it's not very helpful, right? So here, studying Sutta is to help us be at peace with ourselves. Then when we explain the Sutta, we do it peacefully. Of course, we try to correct certain approaches which are clearly wrong, but that's not really important. The important thing is we understand what's going on inside ourselves. From studying the Sutta, we learn about ourselves. The suttas, as you know, are records of the Buddha's own meditation, his own experiences, stories about other disciples and other people who meet the Buddha and how they learn. And here we have two stories with a main character called Vakkali, right? Vakkali Sutta, the discourse on Vakkali, S 22.87. Here the theme is on sexuality, suicide, and sainthood. Quite big things here. Because here we are talking about someone who look at the Buddha and is more interested in the beauty of the Buddha rather than learning the Dharma, for example. And you find this very common today, even with gurus and religious groups. People tend to look up to teachers by their form, right? By the way they look, but by their looks. So you have this Lakuntaka Badiya Sutta. This monk, he was a dwarf. He said that some people they look at him and think, oh, he looks ugly, and they form opinions about him. So, but they dismiss him by looks. But then when they hear his voice, he's got this really wonderful voice. And then they say, wow, it's got a good voice, and they get carried away. So they said there are those who listen to me by voice, and then they get lost also, right? So that's not the way, right? In fact, then there are also others who measure teacher by Dharma. They say, oh, this teacher has got very good Dharma and so on. Now, it's not that it's not good to have the Dharma. The thing is, we should not be measuring teachers. Rather, we should be listening and then learning, and then we build ourselves up, right? And then also another measure of charisma is asceticism, or how holy the teacher looks. And we say, oh, this teacher looks holy, this teacher looks old. There are some people, especially those who are Chinese traditionalists, they see old monks, they say, oh, this is wonderful, this teacher must be very wise. But then they might not realize that this old person had just became a monk a few weeks ago, and he's really quite ignorant, And there are people nowadays who retire, who see becoming a monk as a retirement plan. So you find it's quite a tricky situation here, right? That is why the Buddha discourages people from renouncing when they are old, because it's very difficult to train them. They become very stubborn, And then people are often mistaken by their looks, thinking that they are very wise when they are not. So these are all measuring people by looks, right? So this is, today we're going to look at a couple of suttas where the Buddha is reminding us not to measure the Buddha or any other teacher, but rather to look at the Dharma and follow the instruction and see, what do I learn about this? What do I know about myself? Right? So that is the kind of background we start with. Okay, I will relate to you the story. One is a story, the other is a sutta teaching. I will start with the story first and then explain to you some details and then compare the two stories and then see what we make of it. Let's see how much the time permits. If there is still a lot of time left, then we might do another short sutta later on. We'll see how. Okay, let us go down now to SD 8.8 brackets 1. Further down, the Vakkali Thera Vatthu, the story of the elder Vakkali. Vakkali Thera Vatthu. 8.8 brackets 1. Yes, there you are. Okay, so you can see here, I've numbered them in a way that you know this sutta comes from SD 8.8. And notice there's no break here. The 1 is linked immediately. It means this is sutta 1, okay, in this SD 8.8. And this is, well, sutta or text. Well, it's not a sutta, this is a text, okay? This is simply a story. Vatthu. Vatthu means, you can translate Vatthu as thing, okay? That is very interesting because in Sanskrit is vastu, and it becomes Thai. It's very easy to learn Pali when you learn Thai. So this word Vatthu is seen as in Sanskrit vastu, and the Thais have a way of pronouncing as as ending. They don't pronounce it as they pronounce S as D, so become Vatthu. Then they pronounce as in Thai itself, it become Pasadu. And Pasadu actually means a parcel. So this is the modern meaning. It means the parcel that we send in the post. So you can see how ancient words, even Pali, change in meaning in modern Thai. So it comes from Vatthu, meaning a story. Okay. So words can change in meaning. This is something we need to know also. And we should not worry too much and say, oh, one word has only one meaning. That's not true. Words change in meaning. That's how our culture and language grow. Thera means elder, meaning stable, one who is stable. Right? The adjective has an I here, Thera. Okay? And here with the E or the, we pronounce as or a, Thera, meaning one who is stable, an elder. And Vakkali is his name. Vakkali, I think the meaning is someone with a good voice. Okay? So he has a good voice, so it's called Vakkali. Vakkali Thera Vatthu, the story of the elder Vakkali. And here notice it is from the Dhammapada commentary. DH is Dhammapada. The A means Atthakatha, commentary. So when you have DH with the big A here, it means it's a commentary. Chapter 25, story 11. All these have been very well translated by some Harvard scholars nearly, I think, a century ago, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Buddhist Legends. All these books are available quite freely, so you don't have to buy them. If you need them, just contact us. If we have the PDF, we'll send to you. PHA 25.11. Then the Pali text is volume 4, page 118, and the following. F means and the following, right? So this is the story of Vakkali's arahathood. And the question is, which Vakkali? Okay, let's look at the story first. It is said that one day after Vakkali, born of a Brahmin family, had reached manhood, he saw the teacher enter Savatthi for alms and was at once captivated by his physical perfection. In other words, this person saw the Buddha and he fell in love with him, basically. Desiring to be near the teacher so as to be able to constantly gaze at his beauty, Vakkali became a monk. Right? So this is a very interesting story, right? So you find what the story is in the commentary. So let's look at some interesting points in this paragraph. This word, when he had reached manhood, Vayapata, is a bit ambiguous here because what is the age range here? We're not told. The Harvard University series Buddhist Legends, they translate as rich manhood, right? So this is what I followed here. On the other hand, I looked up another source called the Apadana. Apadana has not been fully translated. It has been translated a bit by Walters, quite useful, with some notes also. In fact, he has done a great service for us by releasing it freely. It's available, the Apadana. And what's interesting is the section on this Apadana, by the way, they're Jataka stories of monks and nuns. Usually when you say Jataka, refers to the story of the Buddha and the close disciples of the Buddha in their past lives. Now, the past lives of the monks, and nuns themselves are called Apadana. Apadana means the harvest of good deeds. What's interesting there, it says this person, this Vakkali, he was a person of great faith, even in the time of Padumuttara Buddha. Now, Padumuttara Buddha is probably, not mistaken, is the 13th Buddha, 13 or 15 Buddha from our own Buddha, from Gautama Buddha's time. Yeah? So it's quite a long time ago. So even during Padumuttara Buddha's time, Vakkali was this very devout follower of the Buddha's teaching. Apparently, and then he was reborn because of his good karmas, he was reborn in our Buddha's time. All right. So anyway, apparently he didn't do any serious practice, so he didn't become a monk at that time, so he didn't gain arahathood. But because of his great faith, he was reborn in our Buddha's time. So according to this Apadana, he was only 7 years old when he went forth to become to be with the Buddha. So this is a rare window into his story. So frankly, I don't know what to make of this at this stage. All that I can say is I can quote this late canonical work. But 7 years old is, in a sense, quite mature, because I think the Vinaya says that if a boy is able to stone crows, it's a very interesting word, to stone crows, to throw a stone at a crow, to chase away crows, in other words. If they can do that, they are regarded as mature enough to become a novice. So this is one way we can interpret this word, rich manhood, that he has reached this level 7 years old. So it can be 7 to say 14, we're not sure unless we can look up some more, research some more commentaries and texts. Anyway, it is even like Rahula was 7 years old, he met the Buddha, and he met his father and asked for the inheritance. He became a novice at 7. So it's not a kind of a rare thing. I mean, it can be rare, but it's not impossible. Okay, it does happen. So you find this probably this, and it was said that he knew the Vedas and so on even at that age. So he was quite a spiritually inclined person, if you like. In fact, we'll see that kind of personality here in a moment. So at 7 he becomes he joins the order as a novice, and he wants to see the Buddha. So of course, if we accept this story, it means this young boy has got a kind of infatuation, a boyish infatuation to the Buddha. So you get a little bit different version of the story, rather than if it's a teenager or older person. But this story is good in the sense that it talks about human behavior today, and how we should manage it. All right. So here he is physically in love with the Buddha. He likes the Buddha's looks, and he follows the Buddha because of that. And of course, this is always an occasion for teaching. The storyteller continues and tells us, the storyteller here is, I suppose, is Buddha Ghosha, who wrote a commentary on the Dhammapada. Neglecting to recite the teachings or to meditate, in other words, to learn the Dhamma, to meditate, he spent his whole time standing near the teacher so that he could gaze at him. The teacher remained silent, waiting for Vakkali's wisdom to ripen. So here, the Buddha is non-judgmental, but he knows what's going on and is watching the progress of this young person. When the teacher knew that the elder Vakkali's wisdom had ripened, he admonished him thus: Vakkali, what is there in looking upon this putrid body? Vakkali, he who sees the Dharma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dharma. Right? So now this reminds me of the teenager Rahula, who was with the Buddha. So he had a similar attitude towards his father. He was walking behind the Buddha, and then he was thinking, oh, how handsome my father is, and noble, and so on and so forth. The father, the Buddha knew this, and then turned around and admonished him. So we have this kind of stories. It's not rare. So here you find this the occasion when the Buddha made this famous statement: he who sees the Dharma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dharma, right? So let's look at it line by line first. Okay, so Vakkali, who is there and looking upon this, what is there and looking upon this putrid body? So he's encouraging this Vakkali to see the body for what it is. This body changes, it gets dirty moment by moment. You have to clean it, you have to go to the toilet. So the Buddha's body is also like that. So what's there to be so to admire it so much in that way, right? So this is what the instruction is. And then there is a kind of deeper instruction. See the Dharma, you see the Buddha. Understand the Dharma, then you understand the nature of Buddhahood. So we don't see the Buddha as a person here, we see as a state of mind, as awakening. And if you see the Buddha, you understand the Buddha, you also understand the Dharma. So here we see this idea of putting the Dharma above the Buddha, the teaching above the teacher, as given in the Garava Sutta, for example, where even the Buddha places the Dharma above himself, right? So you have two teachings given here to Vakkali, right? Practice watching the impurities of the body, and also putting Dharma above the teacher, the teaching above the teacher. 3. But in spite of the teacher's admonition, the elder Vakkali could not let the teacher out of his sight. Finally, the teacher thought, unless this monk receives a moving shock, that is a samvega, a religious shock, if you like, he will never come to understand. Like he will never grow, he will never change. So he has to be put into a kind of shake him up to wake him up, Now, the rains retreat was near. And on the rains entry day, that's the first day of the rains retreat, the teacher living for Rajagaha dismissed the elder Vakkali with the words, "Go back, Vakkali. Go back, Vakkali. Appehi, Vakkali. Appehi." Appehi means go back. Okay. Ehi means come. Appehi means go back. Right. So in other words, Vakkali, don't follow me. You go back to the monastery and stay there. All right. So he was devastated. 5. So now you see the next line is Vakkali's own thought. All right. So you have here the omniscient narrator. The omniscient narrator is telling us what Vakkali is thinking. Now, for the period of 3 months, I'm unable to see the teacher in his presence. What is the use of my living any longer? I will throw myself down from a cliff. Okay, so here we see someone who's really desperate. Of course, this makes it a bit difficult for us to see him as a 7-year-old boy. Probably, I mean, someone more mature only will have such thoughts, right? But like I said, in literature, you just keep your mind open until we discover more details. For the moment, we look at this story. There's someone here who's very much taken up by the Buddha's looks. So the story goes then, section 6, and with that thought, he climbed Mount Vulture Hill, right? So there is like a cliff there. In fact, even today, you probably can see there's a rock there. It's called Mount Vulture Hill or Vulture Peak. There is this jutting rock that looks like a vulture's peak, a vulture's beak, all right? He probably went to that spot to jump off this high point. So he's kind of suicidal, if you like, so very attached. And so we have a good idea the difficulty he's facing. He's very emotional, right? The teacher, knowing that Vakkali was weary of the world, so this a kind of euphemism for suicidal, weary of the world, thought, if this monk receives no comforting from my presence, he will destroy his predisposition to the attainment of the path and the fruits. So here, the Buddha is not concerned only with his life, because, I mean, it's not just a life, we want this quality of life, that he's able to attain the path and the fruits. So if he has all this negative thought and then he kills himself, it would be difficult for him to meet another Buddha. So the Buddha did something interesting. Verse 8. Then he, that is the Buddha, sent forth a radiant image of himself, a hologram, a beautiful, bright, radiant image, a projection for Vakkali himself to see. Now notice the words, for Vakkali himself to see. So the impression here is that only Vakkali can see this. So it's a kind of mind-to-mind transmission, all right? Now, of course, if you think that this is quite amazing, then I'm sure you have or you should be watching movies like Star Trek, right, where you have people like the Vulcan Spock saying my mind to your mind and so on. So he's able to transmit. It has this kind of power of communicating from mind to mind. So here, the Buddha is able to do this from a distance. All right. Remember, he's a Buddha. He's a meditator, and he's very special in this. He has got all these powers. So he made Vakkali see this beautiful image of him. The moment the monk saw the teacher, the weight of sorrow that had oppressed him vanished. So you see, this is a very clear case where this person is very attached to the Buddha. So the moment he sees the Buddha, he's so happy. Now you often see this kind of behavior with young people and their favorite singers and actors, and they grow wild seeing them, and they get into this fantastic euphoric state. Right? So you have this kind of situation here. So the Buddha is dealing with this. So the psychologists will love this kind of document, and they have a lot to tell us, right? Okay, verse 9. Then the teacher, as though filling the dry bed of a lake with a flood of water, caused a great zest and joy to arise in the monk, and pronounced the following stanza. Full of joy and faith in the Buddha's teaching, the monk will reach the place of peace, the happiness of the stilling of the formations. Now this is Dhammapada 381. Okay, so let's look at this a bit more closely. What is this verse? What is this passage telling us? All right, we should not just read like that. We should find out what's going on. Now, I've not made any notes here, so I'm telling you directly. Maybe after this, I try to remember to write the notes in if necessary, if possible, that is. So here, the imagery is a dry lake, parched and dry. And here comes this water flowing in. There is life, plants are going to grow. So in other words, there's life now. This person's Vakkali is feeling really good, very happy. Like the hot weather is gone and it's feeling good, something like that. But there's something else. Here, this story tells us the Buddha caused great zest and joy to arise in the monk. Zest and joy, piti and sukha. The moment you hear the word piti and sukha, we're talking about jhana, right? So here is a story about jhana. This is a story about deep meditation. And again, the verse confirms this. Now look at this verse 381. This is the verse behind the story of Vakkali. Okay, so this verse tells us a story, which I'm telling you now. So here the verse also talks about meditation, full of joy and faith. So here you will see the character of this Vakkali. He has deep faith in the Buddha's teaching. The monk will reach the place of peace as nirvana. And but how? By overcoming the formations. All right. So the Buddha is talking about this monk getting into meditation. Now, let me not say too much. Let's see what happens next before I say anymore. Let's go on. Next, section 11. Okay, so remember now you got to picture this really amazing situation here. Vakkali is going to jump, right? He's standing at the edge of this cliff, and the Buddha appears before him. Actually, it's in his mind. He sees the Buddha. And the Buddha speaks to him. 3 verses. Okay, these are called the embedded verses. Okay? They are embedded in the commentary itself. Come, Vakkali, fear not. Look at the Tathagata. Look at me, or look at the Buddha. I will lift you up like one lifting an elephant stung in the mire. Right? I'll bring you out of your suffering. Come, Vakkali, fear not. Look at the Tathagata. Notice here again, you have this imagery of look. Look at me. You want to see me, right? So just look at me. I will free you just as the Pali just says, as the sun is freed from Rahu's law, more. Now, when you see Rahu here, you know it refers to an eclipse. So I put the brackets here to help our modern readers to know the actual context. The eclipse sun is freed from Rahu's more. So because in ancient times, they believe this Rahu is this huge, big monster that swallows up the sun and swallows up the moon, okay? Basically, this we are talking about an eclipse, right? Third verse, come Vakkali, fear not, Vakkali, look at the Tathagata. I will free you just as the eclipse moon is freed from Rahu's maw. So you have here these very beautiful stories about the Buddha reaching out to people with joy, freeing them from their suffering, right? So this is not so much like the sutta teaching. It's more of a favorite with the commentaries, right? Where people like to hear stories, they're very happy when you tell them, oh, you know, the Buddha helps you to be happy and so on, right? So you have this person getting help. In fact, this kind of idea is important. Occasionally, you have even on our Facebook, you have some people, they say they are in really deep difficulty, they are suffering, they're in pain, they're having mental problems, and they need help. And if you do not know all these stories and you have not worked with difficult people like this, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to tell them. So these are the kind of stories that are very useful for us to help others with, right? So here you have the Buddha helping Vakkali. The elder Vakkali thought, I have seen the one with the 10 powers. Okay, here you have the Buddha. The Buddha is given this late canonical title, the one with the 10 powers, Dasabala. Okay, Dasabala, 10 powers. Okay, and he speaks to me saying, come. He had once experienced profound joy. So remember, all this is in his mind. So it's like he's doing Buddhanusati, he's picturing, he's meditating, he's focused. So profound joy arises in his mind. He thought, how shall I go? Okay, we have to be very careful with this line. We may think, oh, so thinking does does occur during jhana, right? Now, this is a story being told behind his experience. My understanding is that you can see Vakkali as someone who is very deeply emotional person. In other words, he is really has this store of very powerful emotion in him. And this is a very common thing with the Indians. For some reason, maybe through generations of culture, you find they have this kind of habit, which is good, which is bad, you know, depending on the situation. And they're able to get into these deep states of joy and so on. And here is an example. You see Vakkali able to do that. So he's someone who's able to get into jhana very quickly. But because of his lustful thoughts, that becomes a hindrance. So it makes very good sense here once you understand the nature of Buddhist meditation, Buddhist jhana. So here, basically, he he's kind of got into this deep state, and he comes out again, and then he looks, what shall I do now? Because he's kind of going to jump off the cliff, and at the same time he's getting into this jhanic state. And standing there on the cliff, on hearing the first line of the stanza, though he saw no path, he leaped up into the air before the one of the 10 powers. So by this time, he has already attained certain levels of deep jhana state, and he is able to have certain psychic powers that of levitation, real levitation, not those false kind that you hear here and there. So he's able to remain in the air at this, right? It's nothing, no big deal in this case, just kind of remaining in the air for him. Next line, as he hovered in the air, as he floated in the air, pondering on the stanzas. So now he has got out of his jhana and he's thinking, he's floating there, and he's in a sense reviewing this wonderful remark made by the teacher, by the Buddha. I mean, you got to imagine this, you know, your favorite movie star coming to you and say hi and so on. So he's really happy. So this stanza uttered by the teacher, he completely suppressed his zest and attained arahathood together with the analytical knowledges. So here is where he has already come out of his dhyanic state. He suppresses his piti, his joy, and then he reflects on the impermanence, non-self, and so on, and he attains arahathood, right? Remember, we're talking about a man who has met previous Buddhas also. So now the fruit is ripening for him, right? And he got all these skills of the analytical skills of the saint, of the arahat regarding language, understanding meaning and Dharma, and he'll be very good in teaching Dharma also. Then, praising the Tathagata, he descended to the ground, stood before the teacher. On a subsequent occasion, the teacher placed him as the foremost amongst those inclined to faith, Sadadimutta. So, in the Anguttara, you find he is recorded as, of all the monks, he's the one, the greatest with faith. That is Vakkali, right? So this is his story, all right? So I will comment a bit more after the break. So we'll take a short break, get a breather, come back for the continuation. So don't be late to come back, about 5 minutes or so. Now, an overview of the story of Vakkali from the Dhammapada commentary. Now here we see this person, Vakkali. He goes up Mount Vulture Hill to jump off, because he was so depressed, he was so sad, he could not see the Buddha. All right. So we are not just talking about someone who has emotional difficulties. From the language of the story, we know that this person is able to meditate, right? So it's difficult to know people. Sometimes their emotions are so mixed up, but they have this really great ability to change, to grow, if they meet a good teacher. So in this case, who better than the Buddha? So you find the Buddha helped this person with this great love, attraction to him. Instead, the Buddha turned it around to benefit this young man himself, unlike modern teachers who would use this for their greed and advantage. And of course, we see here Vakkali as someone who has this ability to meditate. It's just that he has certain other hindrances, right? So the lesson here is sometimes we cannot know people. They may seem like crazy or a little bit different from others, but there are certain aspects of him we do not yet understand. In fact, if you're from Western Europe or from any of those countries where there are a lot of great artists, you know, many of these great artists behave in very strange ways, but they produce great works, great writings, great paintings, music, and so on. And they often suffer a lot because of this connection with beauty and so on. So you see this. Vakkali is one such person who is in contact with this deep aspect of him, which is able to arise above himself. With the Buddha's help, he is able to see true reality and become an arhat. In other words, someone free who has freed himself from the gravity, the heaviness and burden of this kind of powerful emotions, if you like. So he's now truly happy. So this is an example of Vakkali here. Now, in the next story is Vakkali Sutta. So let's look at Vakkali Sutta now. Now, this is a sutta. So this is a bit more sedate, a bit more serious, if you like. And this is from the Samyutta. In this case, you don't see all those colorful details like in the Dhammapada story. But here, the mood is more somber. Here also, the theme is suicide, actual suicide in this case. Now, in the case of the previous story, Vakkali on Mount Vulture Peak, it is an attempted suicide. Okay? But in this story, S22.87, we actually see suicide. So the context is going to be very interesting because technically, suicide is not allowed in the Vinaya. But there is a twist to this rule, you see. For the monk to be guilty of this rule, he has to be alive. But this monk who has killed himself is already dead. So the point of the rule is that a living monk should not commit this. The idea is to prevent this kind of conduct, because life is precious. It's wrong in that sense. But there are, you can say, loopholes in the rules, if you like. I mean, one way of us looking at the situation. It's we're talking about the mind of the Arahat, right? So if you look at the situation, you have a very special case here. He's not breaking the rule, as we will soon see. So let's look at this really interesting story, or this detailed story of Vakkali. I call this Vakkali number 1. Okay, the previous one is Vakkali number 2. The one in the Dhammapada commentary is Vakkali number 2. So I've written a kind of a summary of these 2 Vakkalis in section 1.1 of your notes, if you download them today, because it's the new version. Vakkali Sutta, the discourse on Vakkali, S22.87. Thus have I heard. Okay, notice here you have the opening statement, and this is found only in the Sinhalese version, by the way. The other, the Pali of the Burmese, the Thai, and the Pali Text Society, they don't have this Ewang Me Sutang. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at the squirrel's feeding ground in the bamboo grove near Rajagaha. So the town is the same with the other Vakkali also. Mount Vulture Hill, and is one of the 5 hills of Rajagaha. But here it is in the bamboo grove. Now, at that time, the Venerable Vakkali was dwelling in a potter's shed, sick, suffering, gravely ill. So we have a different situation here. You have this monk who's really sick. We don't know how old is he, but he's very sick, and he's not able to walk by himself, so he's lying down. Then the Venerable Vakkali addressed his attendants. Come, Avuso, brothers, approach the Blessed One, pay homage to him in my name with your head at his feet, and say, Bhante, the monk Vakkali is sick, suffering, gravely ill. He pays homage to the Blessed One with his feet, with his head at his feet. Then say, it would be good, Bhante, if the Blessed One would visit the monk Vakkali out of compassion. Yes, Avuso, the monks replied in assent to the Venerable Vakkali. They then approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down at one side. So here you see it's a new situation, and we call this Vakkali number 1, and this story is found in the sutta itself. Okay, let's see what happens. So the messengers went to see the Buddha. Further down. 5, right, sitting thus at one side. Those monks said this to the Blessed One, right? So the monks convey the message. It says, Bhante, the monk Vakkali is sick, and he pays homage, and he wants you to visit him, all right? So you see all this, the repeated message is in italics, all right? So this way we know it's all there, it's not lost. The Blessed One consented by his silence. So the Buddha basically agreed to go and see Vakkali, who was very sick. Then the Blessed One, having dressed himself and taking robe and bowl, visited the Venerable Vakkali. So we're not sure what time of the day. This could be maybe in the afternoon or towards evening. The Venerable Vakkali saw the Blessed One coming in the distance and stirred on his bed. He was preparing to get up to bow down. Okay, let's see what happens. Further down. 8. Then the Blessed One said this to him, enough, Vakkali. Or in our modern terms, we say, no need. No, don't do that. No need, okay? Enough, Vakkali. Do not stir on your bed. There are seats spread and ready. I will sit down there. So he's telling this sick Vakkali, don't get up. Just stay as you are. It's all right. Okay, I will sit here. The Blessed One then sat down on the spread seat. Seated on the seat spread and ready, the Blessed One said this to the Venerable Vakkali. So now he's going to ask after Vakkali. I hope you are bearing it, Vakkali. I hope you are getting better. I hope your pains are abating, not rising. That they are abating is evident, not they are rising. Right. So this is what's called stock passage. Is the way monks would, the Buddha would greet another monk who's sick, who's not well. Bhante, says Vakkali number 1 here, okay? I cannot bear it. I'm not getting better, and my pains are not abating, but rising. Their rising is evident, not yet abating. Right? So Vakkali is saying he's in great pain. Right? And then the Buddha says, I hope then, Vakkali, that you are not troubled by restlessness and regret. Right? So you feel okay, you feel calm inside. But then again, Vakkali says, indeed, Bhante, I have a lot of restlessness and regret. Right? So he's troubled. 11. I hope, Vakkali, that you have nothing for which to reproach yourself in regard to moral virtue, right? So here, the Buddha is progressively asking after Vakkali. So first of all, his physical health. Hope you're okay, but he says, no, I'm in pain. And then his moral health. So, okay, I hope you don't have any worries about anything, done, undone. And then the Vakkali says, well, I don't have anything in terms of moral, there's no moral problem. I'm not troubled in that sense. But then the Buddha asks, okay, what are you troubled with then? 12. Then Vakkali, if you have nothing for which to reproach yourself in regard to moral virtue, why are you troubled by restlessness and regret? Okay, now we come to the part that connects the two Vakkali stories, okay? Just one little word here, in fact, connects the two stories. Let's see, what's that word? For a long time, Bhante, says Vakkali number 1, I have wanted to come and see the Blessed One. But I do not have enough strength in my body to visit the Blessed One, to see him. Right, so notice the word see is repeated twice. That's his emphasis. All right. So he wanted to see the Buddha. That's all. In this story, that's all we get a hint that there's this idea of wanting to see the Buddha. That's all. Then the Buddha replies with a famous statement. Section 13. Enough, Vakkali. What is there to see of this foul body? One who sees the Dharma sees me. One who sees me sees the Dharma. In seeing the Dharma, Vakkali, one sees me. In seeing me, one sees the Dharma. Right? So here we see the Buddha admonishing Vakkali. See, no, you don't have to visit me. Right? So Vakkali, he's full of faith and saying, I didn't want to see you, but I couldn't see you. And that's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling so troubled. Then the Buddha comforts him and says, no, don't worry about that, You see the Dharma, you will see me. Practice the Dharma. Now, what happens here is the Buddha then actually teaches Vakkali how to see the Dharma. He gives him a special teaching, which he's going to use and is going to pass away with it. It's going to become an arahat because of this. 14. What do you think, Vakkali? Is form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. Right? So this is famous. Now, this is very important. Sometimes we sit here and say, oh, I know this, and then we just quickly skim through. This is what we are meant to read and reflect, and this is the teaching that is handed down to us for our own wisdom and awakening. So is form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Bhante. So notice Vakkali knows the basic. He knows. But knowing alone will not help us. You need to internalize it. You have to change this to reach deep into the unconscious, remove the roots of the unwholesome. Is what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, bhante. Right? So here, in other words, no self, reflecting on no self. Okay. Further down, next one, yeah, 14.2. What do you think, Vakkali? Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, bhante. So the same attitude towards feeling. Notice how we can quickly forget this is about feeling. So previously it's about form of the body, now the feeling that arises. Same thing, they're also impermanent. They come and they go. Now we've gone to perception. What do you think, Vakkali? Is perception, when you recognize something in your experience, is that permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, bhante. Is what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, bhante. You can't own it, right? Feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent. What is impermanent brings us suffering. And it brings us suffering because we want to own it. We want to have more and more of it. So we have to let it go. There's no self in it. 14.4, what do you think, Vakkali? Are mental formations, this mental karma, the karma that makes you want to do things, to speak, are they permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, bhante. What do you think, Vakkali? Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? This very moment you're conscious of things, it's changing. It is impermanent, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, bhante. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself? No, bhante. So we should not own it. We should not see it as something that's me, myself, right? So that's the reflection of the three characteristics of the five aggregates. Now, the Buddha is teaching us this truth, this reality applies to the five aggregates in every way. So this is called the totality formula of the five aggregates. Total, right? In terms of time, in terms of space, in terms of subtlety, in terms of self and other, in terms of far and or near. All right, now the Buddha goes on and tells Vakkali, therefore, Vakkali, any kind of form whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, right, in terms of time, né? Internal or external, whether it is inside you, that is your faculties, or outside your objects, gross or subtle, right? Whether mental, whether physical or mental, right? Or whether it is of this world, inferior or superior, of this world or higher worlds, sense world or the fine and the what do you call that, form world, formless world, inferior, superior, in terms of meditation levels of the worlds. No? Far or near, because here very simply, here or you go anywhere else in outer space, elsewhere, wherever there is life, wherever you can exist. These five aggregates are like that. one sees all forms as they really are with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I'm not, this is not myself. So this is a non-self again. All right, what next one is reflection on feelings. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, one sees all feelings as each really is with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I'm not, this is not myself. Then we reflect on perception. Any kind of perception whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. One sees all perceptions as each really is with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I'm not, this is not myself. 15.4. Any kind of mental formations or all those karma that we think of in our minds, mental formations, whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, one sees all mental formations as each really is with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. And now the fifth aggregate, consciousness. Any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, one sees all consciousness as it really is, with right wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Now, what is the benefit of this kind of vision? Session 16. Seeing thus, Vakkali, a well-taught noble disciple becomes revulsed with form, revulsed with feeling, revulsed with perception, revulsed with formation, and revulsed with consciousness. Revulsed meaning we do not get normal, we are cheated by it. We know it for what it is. Just like you touch fire, you know, wow, it burns, you're not going to touch it again. Revulsed. Very strong feeling. We don't want to be cheated by it anymore. Being thus revulsed, his last fades away. Right? No more, the desire doesn't arise anymore because you know the real situation. It just looks nice, but it's not really nice. So the lust is gone. You are calm, right? There's no hatred either. The lust is gone, you are calm. Through the fading away of lust, that is dispassion, you can call it dispassion if you like, his mind is freed. The mind feels light and bright and happy. When it is freed, there comes the knowledge, freed. Notice, just freed, doesn't say the mind or anything, just freed. He directly knows birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived. Done what is to be done. There's no more of this state of being, no more rebirth. Right? So this is the famous phrase for arahanthood. So here you have gone through the passage of arahanthood. Right? Now we've been hearing this very often. So here you are. I want you to be familiar with this. Something will click inside you one day. You say, oh, that's familiar. I want to know what that means. Something will grow in you, the root of wisdom. As you mature, as you grow older, this wisdom will grow with you. Okay, let's look further down. So now something happens to Vakkali. He doesn't get better because he's really very badly sick. Then the Blessed One, having given this advice to the Venerable Vakkali, rose from his seat and left for Mount Vajra Hill. So the Buddha leaves, goes back to where he's staying. Then not long after the Blessed One had left, the Venerable Vakkali addressed his attendants thus: Come, Awuso, lift me up on this bed and carry me to Kalasila of Black Rock on Isigili's slope. So this is another hill outside Rajagaha. how can one like me think of dying among houses? Right? So he was staying in a place where near the residential areas, so he wants to go to a more peaceful place. Yes, I would so. The monks replied in lesson to the Venerable Vakkali, and having lifted up the Venerable Vakkali on the bed, carried him to Kalasila on Isigiri slope. So because it's a very peaceful place to rest. The Blessed One, now we go to where the Buddha is. The Blessed One spent that night and the rest of the day on Vulture Peak Hill. Then when the night was fast spent, two devatas, that means two divine beings from the sensual heavens, of exceeding beauty, lighting up the whole of Vulture Peak Hill, went up to the Blessed One, and having gone up to the Blessed One and paying him homage, they stood at one side. Standing thus at one side, one of the devatas said to the Blessed One, Bhante, the monk Vakkali is intent on liberation. Vakkali really wants to attain awakening. Right? So he's very moved by the teaching. So he's striving hard to become Arhat. Then the other devata said this to the Blessed One, surely, Bhante, he will be freed, well freed. Now, these two devatas are really wonderful. They're cute, as we say. You find they're very good companions, and they're giving two complementary messages. This is what the devata said to the Blessed One. Having said this, they paid homage to the Blessed One, and keeping him on their right, disappeared right there. Okay, so this is a message from the devas saying, well, this Vakkali is going to attain Arhathood. All right? Okay, let's see what happens now. 25. Then when the night had passed, the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, come, bhikshus, go and visit monk Vakkali and say to him, Avuso Vakkali, listen to the word of the Blessed One and the two devatas. Last night Avuso, when the night was fast spent, two devatas of exceeding beauty went up to the Blessed One, lighting up the whole of Vulture Peak Hill. Then they went up to the Blessed One and having paid him homage, stood at one side, and then tells the whole story again. Like standing at one side, the devatas told the Buddha that Vakkali is really intent on becoming an Arhat, and he will gain this awakening. Okay, so the Buddha is telling the monks to go and tell Vakkali this good news, to give him courage to practice. Further down. Right, so here we see the whole story being retold, right? You know, notice all these italics, right? Everything is said again, all right? But there is a bit of addition at the bottom here. Okay? So this is 26. So here you see the Buddha tells the messengers to go and pass his message to Vakkali about the visit of the devas, right? Up to here, all right? Up to here, the other devata said, okay. And then the Buddha added his own message. Now, and the Blessed One says to you, Avuso Vakkali, fear not, Vakkali, fear not, Vakkali. Your death will not be in vain. Your demise will not be in vain. Okay? So now this last line is very similar to what the Buddha told Vakkali number 2 also. Right? So here you see the Buddha repeating the same thing, saying, do not fear, do not fear. So in other words, yes, the Buddha is giving encouragement. And this is a very important practice among us as Buddhists, to encourage each other. Right? So this is very important. We should not behave very serious. Sometimes, you know, we personal practitioners, we are a bit too serious. we've got to be more kind to each other, a bit gentle with each other. In other words, this is the Buddha's way. Okay, so here the Buddha is encouraging Vakkali, says, be brave, Vakkali, be strong, practice. Your death will not be in vain. Your demise will not be in vain. Oh, it is rather strange because here the Buddha seems to know that this monk is going to die because he's very sick, right? So he says, don't worry. Uh, when you die, you will not be useless. So here, because here the Buddha is telling directly to this monk, even if you have to pass away, it will be something wonderful because you will gain arahathood. Your demise will not be in vain. So this is the Buddha is encouraging, giving bedside counseling in a sense, right? But he's passing this message through the messengers, all right? Okay, now comes the time when Vakkali decides to end his life. This is a bit of controversy, if you like, here. See, here we must say that the Buddha did not know Vakkali is going to kill himself. A Mahayana theologian might say, oh, the Buddha knows everything, but that's going to cause a problem. We say Buddha knows everything. So is the Buddha encouraging the suicide? And I would say that there are occasions when the Buddha, when he does not direct his mind to want to know something, he will not need to know it. He does not know it. That's good enough for me anyway. All right, so here, let's see what happens to Vakkali, 27. Then the Venerable Vakkali addresses attendants, come, Avuso, lower me from the bed. How can one think of listening to the Blessed One's teaching while seated on a high seat? So when he received the message, when the message is coming in, it's like those ancient Chinese movies, you know, the emperor has come, someone comes, a messenger comes with this emperor's missive, and everybody will kneel down and listen. So here, the Vakkali says, oh, this is amazing. The Buddha is giving a message. So he wants to get down and kneel down and listen. So 28, yes, Avuso, the monks replied, in essence, to the Venerable Vakkali, and they lowered the Venerable Vakkali from the bed. So they put him on the ground so he can kneel down, and then the monks give him the message. Okay, so notice the message from the Buddha said the two devas came and told, then they say they saw Vakkali, and they know that he's going to pass away, and he'll be freed. He will attain arahathood. But the message of the Buddha is additional message: your death will not be in vain. Your demise will not be in vain. Okay. Well then, Avuso, pay homage to the Blessed One in my name, with your head at his feet, and say, Bhante, the monk Vakkali is sick, suffering, gravely ill. He pays homage to the Blessed One with his head at his feet, and then say, okay, now Vakkali repeats the teaching given to him. Okay, so of course this is also a device in the sutta style where the monks, people like us listening to teaching again, will practice, not just listen to a story, we also practice the same thing Vakkali is practicing. That is on the three characteristics of the five etiquettes. So now we'll do a simple sutta puja, okay? Now I'm going to read the long line, then you read the reply line, the short one, or you can read whichever line you like. You don't have to turn on your microphone, so the idea is to read it and connect with it, or just listen if you like, okay? All right, 30.2. Form is impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I have no doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering. So this is Vakkali's own testimony. Further down, I do not doubt that in regard to what is impermanent, suffering and subjective to change. I have no more desire, lust, nor affection. Okay. 50, hold on. Feeling is impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I have no doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering. I do not doubt that in regard to what is impermanent, suffering is subject to change. I have no more desire, lust, or affection. Perception is impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I do not doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering. I do not doubt that in regard to what is impermanent, suffering is subject to change. I have no more desire, lust, nor affection. Mental formations are impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I do not doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering. I do not doubt that in regard to what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, I have no more desire, lust, or affection, no affection. Consciousness is impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I do not doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering. I do not doubt that in regard to what is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. No more desire, lust, no affection. So here Vakkali is responding. It says, I am reflecting on this. I'm clear about this. I have received your teaching. So this is given as an instruction to the monks. So you see a lot of this kind of exchanges of messages in Buddhist literature. Yes, Avuso, the monks replied in essence, and then they left. So you have this group of messengers going back and forth between Vakkali and the Buddha. Then not long after the monks had left, the Venerable Vakkali used a knife. So it's when he killed himself, right? So he didn't wait for the pain to take over. He decided to end it, to end his life. Further down, let's see what happens. Then the monks went to the Blessed One and sat down at one side, seated thus at one side. The monk said to the Blessed One, Bhante, the monk Vakkali is sick, suffering, gravely ill. He pays homage to the Blessed One with his head at his feet and then say, form is impermanent. I have no doubt about this, Bhante. I do not doubt that whatever is impermanent is suffering, and so on. So the messenger monks repeat exactly what Vakkali has said, his own reflection. Now we're coming near the end. Then what happens? Let's see. So while this message is being told to the Buddha, what's happening to Vakkali? I mean, he's probably dead by then. You know, he killed himself already. But what really happened? Let's go further down. Right. So all this the teaching that Vakkali has remembered, and he's relaying it back to the Buddha. And then the messenger finished reciting their message. Then 34. Then the Blessed One then addressed the monks thus: Come, bhikshus, let us go to Kalasila on the Isigili slope where the son of family Vakkali has used a knife. Now, you see, that's the thing, is there's no mention about Vakkali using the knife, but here you see the Buddha knows. In this case, the Buddha knew Vakkali already has died. 34. Okay, further down. Yes, Bhante, those monks replied in assent. Then the Blessed One, together with a number of monks, went to Kalasila on the Isigili slope. The Blessed One saw in the distance the Venerable Vakkali lying on his bed with his shoulder turned, in other words, slumped. All right? Why? Because he slit his throat and then he died on his bed. Now, on that occasion, a mass of smoke and darkness was moving to the east, moving to the west, moving to the north, moving to the south, moving upwards, moving downwards, and moving in the directions in between. There is this cloud of smoke, right? So this is a bit of a mythical story or mythical flourish to this story, because there is an important teaching coming. What is that teaching? Let's find out. Further down, the Blessed One then addressed the monks. Bhikshus, do you see that mass of smoke and darkness moving east, west, north, south, and then above, below, in directions between? Yes, bhante. That Bhikshus is Mara, the bad one, seeking the consciousness of the son of family Vakkali, wondering, where now has the consciousness of the son of family Vakkali established itself for rebirth? But Bhikshus, with consciousness unestablished, the son of family has attained nirvana. So this imagery of Mara looking to see where is the consciousness. In other words, where is Vakkali reborn? So this is a literary device to show that Vakkali has attained arahathood. His consciousness is unestablished. Now, this word unestablished has caused a bit of problems, or not unestablished, rather, the word apatitita. Because some scholars have translated it as unsupported. So imagine if you read this with consciousness unsupported. Now, when you say consciousness unsupported, it means there is this consciousness and it finds no support, right? But if you look at the Pali, this word apatitita, unestablished, and you read it as with consciousness unestablished, you have a different nuance here. The consciousness does not establish itself anymore, does not arise anymore. You see, because when you translate as unsupported, you have the idea that, oh, there is this consciousness, it exists not by itself, but it's not supported. So some scholars think, oh, you see, the Buddha actually teaches there is this consciousness that exists outside of nirvana. In other words, there is this self. That is not in accordance with the sutta, right? So we wouldn't say that it's like you. It is just that it is unestablished, no more rebirth. So you have this Vakkali, he has passed away, he killed himself, but he's no more around. He's already awakened in nirvana. So there's nothing more to talk about him, whether he committed suicide or not. So this is the irony of it all. You can't really blame him. And this is the meaning that the Buddha said his death will not be in vain. And this is where the Devas say that his death will be good in the sense that he will become an arhat. So you see here quite a dramatic story. You may have to read a bit and lots of notes for you to follow up with. So let's see, there are a few questions. Now let me try to clarify them as time permits. Okay, can we go on now?
Brother Piya. There's a question from Brother Tom Anderson.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's about Sutta under the number 18. And with among the houses, can you explain a little?
Oh, here among houses is a term meaning where Vakkali was staying at that time. He's staying near a village. Or he could be staying with some lay people taking care of him. That's the other possibility. All right. So among houses basically means like when the monks are going on alms rounds. So they're said to be going among houses. So this is a term meaning either near some houses or among going house to house to collect alms. But here, because we're talking about Vakkali staying, he's staying near the village. So he wants to get away to a quiet, peaceful place. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Brother Piya.
Mm-hmm.
The next question from Sister Huilin.
Yes.
Does the Mara always appear like a mass of smoke and darkness in the sutta, apart from this Vakkali Sutta?
No, not always. No. In fact, you will see this Mara appearing as smoke in this sutta and in the Godika Sutta. This is where we say it as a literary, that it is a literary device it's the way the storytellers describe to show that the consciousness of this arahat does not appear anywhere, and even Mara is not able to find it. So in order to make Mara, Mara is so far away, how do you see him in the distance flying around? So he is represented with this cloud of this dark cloud, moving here, moving there, almost like the story of monkey, if you remember, seen those movies. So as far as I remember, in this sutta and in the Godika Sutta, you can look up the notes there to see if there are other versions, but I don't think it's that common. It's not a very common imagery. Okay, next
Okay,
question.
thank you, Brother Piya. Brother Ng raised his hand. Brother Ng, can you please unmute?
Hi, Brother Piya, I would like to ask about this Vakkali Sutta,
Yes.
the Bhujanga Sutta. I was thinking to myself, why
two suttas, is it?
Yeah, Buddhas accorded different treatment to Vakkali as compared to Mahakassapa and Mahamungalana, and even to himself when they were you, right? Buddha actually recited the Bhujanga Sutta, the 7 factors of enlightenment,
Okay.
and resulting in the illness being cured, right? So
Yes.
I was just thinking to myself, why does the Buddha in this case for Vakkali, he actually did something different?
Yeah, very different.
Right, and then in a way, look at it, the fact that he actually told Vakkali that he would not have what you call that, his passing will not be in vain, right? Actually, indirectly encouraging his suicide, if I may personally interpret it this way.
Yes.
But above all is that if Buddha recited the Bhujanga to Vakkali, what would have happened? He might actually get Vakkali cured just as the other Mahakassapa and Mahamungalana. Also because Vakkali is the less status-wise is not as pronounced as the other two disciples. That's why he treated.
Yeah, well, that's one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it. Now, my approach is always look at the story as it is. What does the story tell us? Sometimes we try to be cleverer than the Buddha. Or we say, why did the Buddha do this? The Buddha should have done that, right? That rephrase, re-question yourself, because the way we ask our question also will help us understand better. So we can ask instead very openly, instead of, many of these things have been conditioned by the Sinhalese teachers, who are very scholarly, but they don't give so much emphasis to the sutta. Give emphasis to the sutta, okay? Ask yourself, what is this sutta? What is this story trying to tell me? What are the details? And why is it like this? Because it's your task, it's my task to present everything clearly and correctly. Of course, we can, speculate. Is the Buddha encouraging this? Is the Buddha doing that? It's possible to, you can ask that if you like, and then you ask yourself, is this so? Is this not so? All right. Of course, we're not going to tell the public, look, the Buddha is encouraging suicide, and then it would be wrong. See, we wouldn't say that, because this is not what the sutta is saying, and this is just our own speculation. Scholars like to do that. That's fine. Scholars earn marks and whatever graduation to that, fine. But for me, as a practicing Buddhist, I don't think I would like to say that, because that's not true. So what can we say here? Number one, yes, you have this man who's very sick and he's going to die. And the Buddha knows that. Then the Buddha is not going to say, okay, let me extend his life a bit. But he's going to die. So that's the fact, you see. And the Devas also know, the Buddhas also know that he's going to die. But in the case of the Bhujanga Suttas, you find Moggallana, Mahakassapa, they were just having a bit of fever. They're not really very sick. They probably did the wrong thing, or they're a bit tired and so on. So that reciting of the Bhujanga helps them to reflect and calm themselves. In other words, let go of the body and focus on the mind and rest. There may be some medical aspect of it which I've not been aware yet at this point, but that's how it works with people who are otherwise healthy. The sickness is just temporary, but in the case of Vakkali, he is dying. The urgency now is, will he die an arahat? That is the point. See? So the Buddha is as if a little ahead of events. He knows what's going to happen. That is why we say, oh, isn't he encouraging suicide, right? But the Buddha never said that if you look at the sutta. That's why I mentioned a while ago that the Buddha probably didn't know that Vakkali was going to kill himself. That aspect, the Buddha didn't predict, okay? Because what he's telling this Vakkali, if you reflect on this, anytime when death comes, it will not be in vain. You will attain arahathood. That is the point of what the Buddha said. Is this clear enough for you? That
Okay.
yeah.
So does that mean that for Arahant, I mean, we attain Nibbana already? It's either with the 5 aggregate existing,
Yeah.
or what does he say is that means he has no, I mean, upper passage.
No more of aggregates. So what is that to talk about? Is it?
Does it mean that Buddha values, I mean, once a person has become an Arahant, death to him is not as consequential as someone who is, just ill, try to cure the person.
Yeah, but of course there is the caveat there. See, the caveat is this: you got to be really sure that you are dying arahat. You see, so in the case of Vakkali and Kodika, they were quite certain, right? Because they went into meditation. It's not just killing themselves like what samurai, is it? Because they were going into meditation, and then it's a very amazing situation, they get into this deep state, and then there is this conditioning. They will kill, they'll slit their throat. After that, when they have attained temporary release, then I think it's called samaya vimutti or something, I forget the exact term. So in other words, once they attain that level, so they are temporarily free, see, and they die, so you don't come back. So what is there to talk anymore? This is a very rare situation, a unique situation, which so far I only know of 2 people who have done that. No one else, as far as I know. Maybe there are other unrecorded cases, but only these 2 cases we know in the suttas. So they are interesting in that sense. It's not an example for us to practice. These are simply historical, unique historical events that how clever these arahats to be were in cheating ignorance and death, if you like. That's how I see it, you see.
So we cannot use it, euthanasia, I mean, mercy killing, and tell someone.
That's interesting.
Not be easy, right? That would be
we can't. I don't think we can use it for euthanasia at all in this case. That's why these stories are not often told. They can be misinterpreted, you see. So we have to be careful not to misinterpret it. All right. Right. Any other question which I missed out or not answered?
Thank you, Insider Brother Piya. There's no more question in the chat box for the Piya.
Okay. All right. I can see Woody, so happy to see you back. You look okay and good. Just wave, you can wave, yeah. All right. Okay. So all questions answered, huh? Okay.
Yes, Brother.
Very good. So, okay, so I've done my job then, all right? So this is the time for us once again. Oh yeah, photo taking, yes. Family photo. So don't forget to make sure you have the latest notes, and we have a habit of updating everything so you get the latest and the best notes. And if you are not sure, just ask us, message us. We'll send whatever we have the latest ones. And now don't forget to keep in touch about the new series, the SD60.1. There are 6 volumes celebrating our 20th anniversary. I don't know, about 1,000 pages of reading. You don't have to read everything, of course, just select what you like. They cover almost every modern aspect of meditation, from the famous teachers that you know, and up to modern psychology about difficulties in meditation they've detected and so on. All right. So find out what SD60, okay, the new series for our 20th anniversary. You go to our Telegram page or to the Facebook, my Facebook page. Let us now take our time, as always, to remember this wonderful moment that we have spent together. You have sacrificed 2 hours by way of renunciation. That's a wonderful practice. That's your good karma. Remember how you have sat together peacefully, reciting the 3 refuges, the 5 precepts, doing your meditation, listening to a teaching, and asking questions. By the power of all this goodness you have done, this peace, may you can say, may I be well and happy. May you be well and happy. And all the blessings that you need. And send your thoughts and loving kindness to your loved ones, to those important to you, to your teachers, to all the people, even those who are not so friendly with you. Send your thoughts to them so that they feel happy with you. And all beings be well and happy. Above all, let us show our gratitude to the 3 jewels who have brought us together in joy and peace and wisdom here, and that we continue to grow nearer to the path. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhiva-temi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bow down to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Bow down to the noble Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.